Hey guys, and happy belated Fishy Friday, recorded on Fishy Sunday. I promised you guys a detailed review of my house tank and my office tank, and I am not gonna let you down. So basically, I'm just gonna talk to you about my house setup first. We will start with history. I originally had this fish tank built by a company here in China. These are not like prefabricated, they're all kind of handmade by a company here in China. They do a lot of these handmade fish tanks for restaurants and stores and shopping centers all over the place for putting fish that they're gonna sell for the markets. The tank is glass. I have had this tank for a good 4 or 5 years now. Originally, it was a full reef. Then I got my office tank and turned that into a reef tank, so I tried to do some different things with this. Right now, it's kind of like an anemone habitat, and I'm trying to build a environment around the anemone, which I have named Bob. You guys that watch my videos know who Bob is. The tank has moved a couple of times. It started in my office on the other side of town, and then it moved here to me and Annie's place. Okay, so that's history. Now let's look at the size of the fish tank. 31 and a half, 19 and a half, 21 and a half. My lighting was assembled by a company here in China. I don't think it really has a brand. It was just, they gave me a good variety of strengths. I don't know so much of the details. When I told the people what I wanted, I said I wanted something that can support some SPS and that will provide some good lighting for a variety of purposes and a variety of wildlife. I have them set on a timer, which is next to the tank, that hides behind this curtain here. And I have it set on a timer through this box. Also, what's hiding here is my water level controller from Tunza and my new POWERHEAD, which recently ate my anemone, but I've kind of fixed that problem. The water controller goes to a container that sits outside and provides freshwater replacement as it evaporates. Probably the most important thing on a fish tank is filtration. You can't have an ecosystem without removing some of the waste. This fish tank is very similar to most other fish tanks. It has a drop off in the corner where the water drops into the overflow box and then goes straight down into the sump. Let me show you the sump. This is the drop, comes on down. Water drops into the first stage. The first stage just has some foam, which I clean regularly. Then it goes to a porous aggregate. And then I have some of these filter stones, which are laid out all through the bottom. They seem to do a pretty good job. Next, I have a protein skimmer from COVE that works pretty well. It's tough to keep them dialed in though. They either collect too much or not enough. I find it very difficult to get things perfect. My return pump, that goes and puts the water back into the fish tank via this pipe here. That goes back up through the overflow box and into the main tank right there. I have one heater in the fish tank now. In the winter, sometimes I add 2. I have a standard power block that's wired in from the back of the fish tank. Oh, you see what I'm saying? Either too much or too little. That always frustrates me about protein skimmers. I can never seem to get them dialed in perfect. That's Bob. We all know Bob. And as far as organisms go, pretty much Bob is the centerpiece. Everything else is supporting it. I have a couple of clownfish, but that's about it. To be honest, I'm not very happy with the state of my organisms in the house tank, other than Bob. Plus, I have a real problem with Aptasia, and that I need to fix that pronto. I have a solution for the Aptasia. I actually bought a high-powered laser here in China. I'm gonna try and zap them. But I won't go over it in this video. This video is just for people that are interested in knowing my setup. I think I'm finished here. So there you go. That's my house tank. Maintenance-wise, I do water changes. I clean the glass all the time, replenish the fresh water, and other than that, I just do my regular feedings. Okay, so I've showed you the house tank. Now let me take you and look at the big tank, the office tank. Okay, now we're at the office. Let's take a look at the office tank. I'm not really gonna go over livestock. You guys know what I have in this fish tank. If you don't, you can look at the Matt's Reef Tank series. Instead, I'm just gonna go over the points that I went over at the house tank. History. I'm gonna link to a video I made about the construction of this tank. If you watch Matt's Reef Tank, you can see the progression of the life of this tank. I had this tank built by a company in China. It is glass. I built it to lay adjacent to this, which is a supporting pylon on the whole building. I figured I had this weird meter by 1 meter by 1 meter pylon, and I thought, well, why don't I just put a fish tank there? It worked out real well. As a matter of fact, the whole office here was built around the tank. I was able to do it because I pretty much designed this whole office, so I designed the fish tank into it. It's a lidless design. I like that open feel so that I can access the tank. I don't have any lids I need to open, but it does have a nice lip on it so that it keeps some of the jumpers from, you know, so easily getting out. I have had a couple of fish escape, but I guess that's inevitable. The tank itself is, like I said, glass. The tank is 102 on each side and 70 tall. I'll leave the breakdown right here in inches and gallons. As for lighting, I have two 6600 ZET lights that I have suspended from the tank from 4 wires. The cool thing about this setup is I can raise and lower each light individually via a 2-lever crank that sits just down on my office side. It's very, very convenient for washing, cleaning, or attending to any of the organisms inside. Now, on the house tank, I had a smaller water tank that replenishes RODI water. On this tank, it's no different, just a little bit bigger and a different autofill mechanism. In the house I used a Tunza, but in the office I use this Hydor Smart Level. I haven't really been happy with any solution. The Tunza I used to have operating the office tank here, but it went bad and I ended up having the tank almost evaporate too much water, and then I had one of the Hydors actually go bad on me as well. So I've gone through 2 of each of those. If anybody has an alternative solution for me, something that might be a little bit more reliable, let me know. The overflow box is in the center of the obstructed side of the tank. So that means that all 3 sides are visible throughout the office. The overflow box drops into the bottom, into my filtration system, which is something you guys have really been asking me about my sump. So here we go. My sump is broken into 4 stages. First, the overflow box drops into the first stage that has a layering of foam padding as well as those porous rocks to filter out some of the heavy stuff. It flows over from there into the next stage, which has my protein skimmer. Again, it's a COVE protein skimmer. It works pretty reliably. I wish it would pull out a little bit more, but every time I try to increase it, it ends up overflowing and it's very hard to dial in. I do have a refugian, which is the 3rd stage. The refugian has been going strong. I've got a lot of algae growing in there and it's very healthy. As a matter of fact, I used to have a fish in there and the algae crowded it out and ended up killing the fish that I had in that area. Every so often though, I have a die-off of 90% of my algae. It all turns white. I remove it and the remaining algae ends up propagating again. Can any of you tell me why it does that? Because I feel like maybe it's because there's so little nutrients that are suspended in the column, which is good. It means that the water's pure, that the algae cannot survive, or maybe there's something killing off the algae. I'm not sure. Let me know. The 4th stage is the return. I've got my pump there that pumps water back into the main tank. I normally put some distressed corals in there just in case I feel like maybe they'll come back. It's just kind of like the waiting area for the whole tank. But that's not the only thing that sits under here. There's more than just the sump. Right here is my doser. I dose magnesium, calcium for alkalinity, KH. Like I said, my friend built this tank for me and he plumbed it according to what I wanted. I've got 2 shutoff valves for the inlet and the exhaust, and I can control those however I want. I have 2 J-bows that work in tandem as WAVEMAKERS. They're 2 different models. Actually, while I was in Everest, one of my older ones ended up breaking and they called the local fish shop guy and he replaced it with an upgraded model. My lighting and power supply is underneath the sump. I have to make everything pretty isolated. It restricts a lot of the room I have. Even my RODI container, which sits next to the tank, is ugly. I wish I didn't have to put it there, but it is what it is. You might notice that I haven't brought up a chiller. I don't use chillers on either of the tanks. I used to have one for the house tank, put out a lot of heat, it was very loud. We keep the temperature of the house pretty even. In the winter we keep it warm, in the summer we keep it cool, so there was no real need for it. The office tank, if you asked me, probably should have a chiller. It's a larger volume of water and it's a little bit more volatile because the office is difficult to keep temperature controlled. I do have heaters and they are right behind me and they keep the tank at a fairly constant warm temperature. It's just bringing it down from hot to cool that's the problem. The autofill comes directly from here and actually drops right into the first stage. It also doesn't allow a siphon, so by dropping in it doesn't actually contact the water, which would allow a backflow. My light ballasts are actually in the ceiling, right there and right there. These are what I use for my water changes. And in my little bathroom here is where I have my RODI set up. Change your filters every so often, make sure that your parts per million are down low, and do water changes regularly. If you haven't noticed, on top of my lights, it's my coral and fish graveyard. Every time I have a loss, it gets dried out on top of the lights. Okay guys, that's about it. That's my house tank and the office tank, sort of a basic review. I'll leave information on the actual gear and equipment below this video as much as I can find so that you guys can parallel whatever I've got. I believe that as far as keeping a good reef tank, it's passion over equipment. You can have a very simple system, and if you have the passion and you can continue to doctor it and be careful and watch it, you can skimp on certain things. Less filter, more water changes. No auto top off just means you got to pay attention more every day and add fresh water. I mean, there's all these kind of gives and takes. That's what I got. Thanks for watching. Haven't done a match reef tank in a long time. May your pH never waver. May your nitrates never rise. Hope you enjoy it. I will talk to you later. May your pH never waver. May your nitrates, may your pH never waver. May your nitrates never rise. May your pH never waver. May your nitrates never rise.